Reality does not exist for you the way you think it does. You are not reading the world. You are reading the frame someone else built around it. Every belief you call your own, every preference you call instinct, every truth you swear by has been compiled by a stranger you never met. This is not paranoia, it is architecture. Society tells you the cure for manipulation is education. They tell you to read more, to think critically, to consult the experts, to do your own research. They are lying. The educated are not harder to frame, they are easier, because their frames feel earned. Their frames feel like conclusions they reached through reason. The literate mind does not resist a sophisticated frame, it welcomes it. It mistakes the elegance of the container for the integrity of the contents. This is the central trick. The frame is invisible to the person inside it. It is not a wall you can see. It is the lens you see with, and every act of looking through it strengthens it. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. Writing in The Prince, he saw that the ruler does not need to win the argument. The ruler needs to set the terms of the argument before it begins. The prince does not argue the truth. The prince writes the page on which the argument will be conducted, and whoever writes the page has already won the debate before the first word is spoken. This is not a tactic, it is the architecture of every functioning state since the invention of language. The story always defeats the fact. The frame always defeats the truth. The page always defeats the ink. You have not been outsmarted by your enemies. You have been operating inside a frame built by people whose names you do not know, for purposes you have never been told. And the smarter you are, the more carefully the frame was tailored to fit you. There are 3 psychological principles that govern who writes whose reality. By the end of this, you will hold the exact architecture of perceptual control, how it is built, who operates it, and how to stop being its raw material. But pay close attention to the 3rd principle. It is the one civilizations are built on. It is the one that decides which wars get fought, which religions get followed, which version of you walks into the room. And once you understand it, you can never look at your own thoughts the same way again. If you are tired of being the page on which other people write, what follows is the architecture of authorship itself. The reality compiler, every piece of information that reaches your conscious mind, has already been processed by a frame you did not choose. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky named this in 1981. They called it the framing effect. In their experiments, subjects were given identical statistical outcomes for a public health intervention, identical numbers, identical odds, identical lives saved and lost. But when the outcome was described as 200 people will be saved, the subjects chose one course of action. When the same outcome was described as 400 people will die, they chose the opposite. The math had not changed, the frame had. And the frame, not the math, decided. You are not deciding, you are responding to a wrapper. This is not communication, it is compilation. Whoever names the thing first owns the thing. Whoever writes the headline owns the article. Whoever frames the war owns the peace that follows. You have spent your entire life arguing the contents of pages whose headers you did not write. Edward Bernays understood this in 1929. Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud and the founder of what we now call public relations. The American Tobacco Company hired him to break the social taboo against women smoking in public. He did not argue that women should smoke. He did not refute the doctors. He did not lobby the legislators. He gave the cigarette a new name. On Easter Sunday, 1929, Bernays hired a group of debutantes to march in the New York City Easter parade carrying lit cigarettes. He seeded the press in advance with a frame. The cigarettes were not cigarettes. They were torches of freedom. Smoking was not addiction. It was emancipation. The reporters arrived, the photographs ran the next morning, and the moral architecture around an entire generation of American women inverted within a decade. The frame did the work that argument could not. The truth that nicotine is addictive and tobacco is carcinogenic was not refuted. It was simply reframed into irrelevance. The compiler had been rewritten. The output changed without anyone touching the math. You must understand what just happened. A single phrase, written by a single man, in a single morning, restructured the relationship between half the population and a known poison. He did not change minds, he changed the page minds were being written on. Look at the last argument you lost. Look at the last opinion you reversed. Look at the last product you bought without intending to. You were not persuaded, you were compiled. Someone wrote the wrapper before you arrived. You found the wrapper, you read the wrapper, you mistook the wrapper for the world. This is the first principle. Perception is not reception. Perception is compilation, and the compiler is running every second you are awake. You now understand the architecture, but architecture without an architect is geology. Someone is writing the page, someone is choosing the wrapper, and the people doing it are not faceless. They are sitting in rooms making specific decisions about what version of reality your nervous system will receive tomorrow. The second principle is not about the mechanism, it is about the operators. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. The frame around the frame. The people who shape your perception of reality the most are not the ones you suspect. They are not the governments, they are not the corporations, they are not the men in the windowless rooms. The most consequential framers in your life are the ones whose framing you have stopped noticing. The parent who described your childhood for you, the partner who described the fight for you afterward, the friend who described your character to you at 16 and accidentally installed an operating system you are still running at 40. The algorithm that decides what the world will tell you about itself this morning. These framers usually do not know they are framing. They have been framed themselves. They are passing the frame forward without authorship. John Bargh demonstrated this at New York University in 1996. He brought subjects into a lab. He gave them a word scramble task. Half the subjects unscrambled words associated with old age. The other half unscrambled neutral words. After the task, he secretly timed how fast the subjects walked down the hallway, leaving the experiment. The subjects exposed to old age words walked measurably slower. They did not know they had been primed. They did not know they had been altered. They thought they were just walking. The frame had moved them, and they had attributed the movement to themselves. Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman demonstrated something similar in 1974. They spun a wheel of fortune in front of their subjects. The wheel was rigged to stop on either 10 or 65. They then asked the subjects to estimate the percentage of African nations in the United Nations. The subjects who saw 10 guessed low. The subjects who saw 65 guessed high. The number on the wheel had nothing to do with Africa. The subjects did not know they had been anchored. They thought they were just guessing. Does this sound paranoid? Good. Ramses II won the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC by losing it on the field and then carving the victory into stone. The actual battle, fought against the Hittite forces of Muwatalli II, ended in a strategic stalemate. Both armies withdrew. The territorial map did not change. Egypt did not control Syria, the Hittites did not collapse, while Ramses returned to Egypt and commissioned reliefs on the walls of Karnak, on the temple of Abu Simbel, on the Luxor temple, on the Ramesseum. The reliefs depicted Ramses single-handedly routing the Hittite army. They showed him driving a chariot through panicked enemies. They showed him as the sole agent of an Egyptian victory that had not actually occurred. For 3,000 years, the official history of the largest chariot battle of the ancient world was the version carved into Egyptian stone. The Hittite cuneiform tablets describing the actual outcome were buried under ruins. They were not recovered and translated until the early 20th century. For 3,000 years, the frame defeated the fact. The truth was the footnote, the lie was the monument. And the only reason any of us know better now is because someone, 3,000 years later, dug up the other version of the page. This is the second principle. The frame in your life is rarely placed by your enemies. It is placed by people who love you, who hired you, who shared a meal with you, who have known you for decades. They placed it without intending to harm you. They placed it because someone placed one on them first. The frame is hereditary. You must look at the closest relationships in your life and ask one question. Whose frame are you living inside? The story of who you are, the story of why you have what you have, the story of why you do not have what you do not have, the story of who hurt you, who helped you, who was the villain in your origin, who was the hero. Every sentence in that story was written by someone, some of it by you, most of it not by you. The architecture is not external. It is the room you have already moved into. Here is the tactical application. For the next 48 hours, do not consume a single piece of information without performing what you are about to install as the frame audit. 3 questions. Who chose the words? Who chose the order? Who decided what gets compared to what? You must apply this to everything. The headline you would have believed, the argument you would have lost, the opinion you were about to share. Watch what happens. The headline reveals its author, the argument reveals its scaffolding, the opinion reveals the seam where it was glued together. You will see frames everywhere, because they are everywhere. They were always there. You just stopped being able to ignore them. The self-frame. This is the third principle, the one teased at the beginning, the one civilizations are built on, and the civilization in question is the one inside your own skull. The most thoroughly framed person in your life is you by you. The voice that tells you what you are not capable of, the voice that tells you who you cannot become, the voice that explains your defeats before you have finished losing them, the voice that delivers the verdict against you every morning before you have brushed your teeth. That voice did not originate with you, it was installed. You have been carrying it for so long, you mistake it for yourself. You think the prison was built by others. You did not build the prison, you did not even build the cell, you built the lock. And then you spent the rest of your life trying to argue your way out, in a language the lock was specifically engineered not to recognize. Joseph Goebbels articulated a propaganda principle in a 1941 article on what he called the technique of large-scale repetition. He observed that a frame repeated with sufficient confidence and at sufficient scale becomes structurally indistinguishable from truth. Not because it deceives anyone in particular, but because no individual has the cognitive resources to constantly re-verify every received frame. The frame is not believed. The frame is too exhausting to refuse. Goebbels was describing the technique of an industrialized state apparatus. He was also describing the inside of your skull. The loudest, most consistent, most relentless propagandist of your life has not been any government. It has not been any corporation. It has been the running commentary inside your own head. Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky named the larger version of this in 1988. They called it manufactured consent. They were writing about media and the manufacture of public agreement to elite political agendas. But the mechanism scales down. You have manufactured consent inside yourself to a version of your own identity that was never debated, never voted on, never authored. You ratified it under conditions you would no longer accept. You ratified it as a child when you did not have the tools to evaluate the framers. You ratified it under pressure when the cost of refusing the frame was higher than the cost of accepting it. And then you spent the next decades treating the ratification as if it were a discovery. They will tell you this is unhealthy. They will tell you to talk to yourself with more compassion. They will tell you to journal your feelings. Let them. They are managing the symptoms. They are not touching the architecture. Compassion does not rewrite the page. Compassion just makes the page easier to live with. You must look at the verdict you have already delivered against yourself, the sentence you serve every morning when you wake up, and ask one question: who wrote that? Because if you did not author it, you can rewrite it. And if you did author it under conditions you no longer accept, you can withdraw the manuscript. If you continue to live inside a frame written by a frightened earlier version of yourself, you will not just fail at your goals, you will succeed at the wrong goals. You will spend a life climbing a ladder placed against a wall you never chose. You will reach the top of someone else's ambition. You will achieve a victory that does not feel like one, and you will have chosen it, not by choosing it, by refusing to choose. By treating the inherited page as if it were the only page that existed. This is the darkest part of the architecture. The propagandist you cannot fire, the framer you cannot leave, the operator you have been feeding daily for as long as you can remember. The good news is the same as the bad news. The propagandist lives in your skull. The skull is yours. The page is yours. The pen, if you are willing to pick it up, has always been yours. We have dismantled the compiler. We have identified the operators. We have found the propagandist inside the skull. Now we arrive at the final destination, the state that makes everything else possible, the state in which the frame around your life is the one you chose, written by the person you have decided to become, the architecture of authorship itself. The sovereignty of authorship. When you stop trying to win arguments inside frames you did not write, you do not become silent, you become the author. You give the situation its name before anyone else gets the chance. You set the comparison set. You decide what the issue is before the room has finished deciding what to call it. And from that moment forward, every voice in the room is responding to your page, not the other way around. You must understand what this looks like in practice. You do not argue with people who frame you badly. You write the page they are arguing on. You do not defend your interpretation of events. You give the events the name that will outlast the dispute. People will sense that something has shifted. They will not be able to name it. They will know only that the conversation has moved to a room they did not build, with furniture they do not recognize, and that you appear to know where the light switches are. They will call this manipulation. Let them. The morality police are losing. Every functioning institution in human history was built by someone who understood that whoever names the thing owns the thing. The only people who object to this principle are the people who have already lost an argument over it. This is not cynicism, it is craftsmanship. The frame was always going to be written by someone. The only open question in every room you walk into for the rest of your life is whether it gets written by you or by whoever showed up first with a pen. Most people refuse the authorship. They would rather argue inside their inherited frame than rewrite the frame. They would rather be right inside a borrowed sentence than be free inside one they authored. Authorship demands responsibility. Authorship means the writer cannot blame the page, and most people prefer the comfort of being a footnote in someone else's manuscript to the burden of writing one of their own. Machiavelli was not writing about princes. The prince was the example available to him. He was writing about authorship. He was writing about the man or the woman or the state that does not contest the page but writes the page. You are the prince of the page you write. You are the architect of the room your conversations happen in. You are the compiler your nervous system has been waiting for someone to become. The only remaining question is whether you have started writing. You walked into this believing reality was real and perception was decoration. You now see that perception is the page, reality is the ink, and the only question that has ever mattered in any room you have walked into is who is holding the pen. The compiler is exposed, the operators are visible, the propagandist in the skull has been named. The only question remaining is who writes the next paragraph of your life. Most people will close this video and go back to arguing inside the frame they inherited. They will defend interpretations they did not author. They will lose battles whose terms they did not set. They will spend the rest of their lives as the page on which someone else writes, and they will mistake the writing for their own thoughts because they have never known anything else. This is not failure, it is the default. The default is the architecture left behind by everyone who came before you, including the version of yourself who first ratified the frame you have been living inside. The default is what happens when no one writes. The page is yours, the pen is yours, but the manuscript will not write itself. You can never again claim ignorance. You have seen the architecture, you have met the architect, you have looked into the mirror and recognized the propagandist as wearing your own face. The only question is whether the architect from this point forward will be you, or whether you will hand the pen back to whoever held it before and pretend you never reached for it. The frame is off. The only question is what you are going to write inside the one you build next. Most people will scroll to the next video. They will absorb the theory and return to the noise. They will keep paying the frame they inherited, keep absorbing the compiled output, keep hoping for a reality that was never going to author itself. But somewhere in your life is another mind that should see this. The one who has been arguing inside borrowed sentences for as long as you have known them. The one who has been losing battles whose terms they did not set. Send this to them. Some debts are owed to minds like yours. The frequency has been sent from Mindcrypt. Those who can receive it will find the next transmission. Those who cannot will return to the noise. The question is simply which one you are.